Welcome to another edition of the Polto Show. Your host, Pearl Polto. You know, I've said on many shows that I start the shows off, what do I have to do to get your attention? Well, today, I'm hoping to get your attention because the topic that I'm going to discuss today is touchy, it's vital, and it's a little bit intimidating, but this is what the show is all about. It's not to intimidate you, it's to educate you. Let's ask ourselves a question. What race do you identify yourself as? Asian? White? African American? Spanish? Native American? Italian? Or the human race? And I'm hoping all of you said the human race. Because all of us, our parents, our grandparents, were brought into this country. And when you're brought into this country, it's amazing what people think of you. It's amazing what they do. When we have a certain percentage of people, and I'm going to go into that because I realize that many white people, I'm calling it, quote, white people, they think a Latino or any other color is tolerable under an education. But they're actually smarter than the minority people. Actually, yes, they're smarter than the minority people, but they must be educated and they must be denied their true abilities. So they get intimidated. And one time, when I was doing credit, it was a person, it was a client of mine actually, and I'm going back 20 years ago. And she said, Pearl, I cannot get the loan. This bank manager is giving me this, but I want this. And I did homework on it. And I realized the only reason why he gave her one and not the other loan was because she was African American. And I said, wait a minute, this isn't right. So I wrote to the head of the company. And when I wrote to the head of the company, I said I was going to expose this in front of everyone. I really didn't know what was going on, but I did know what was going on. He was being prejudiced and didn't want to give her a certain loan because he wanted to make a bigger commission. But when I wrote to the head of the company, she did get the loan of her choice and realized. But she said to me, I already know why he denied me, Pearl. A lot of people does not realize why they get turned down. So I went home that day and I went over to see my parents. And I said to my father, you're not going to believe what happened today. You're not going to believe this. They turned down a loan because the color of her skin. How could people do this, Dad? And my father's passed away now. But he said to me, what country are you living in, Pearl? What day and age are you living in? And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, look at the color of your skin. And I said, I'm white. He said, no, you're not. To white people, Italians are not white. And it took us, when my grandparents, which was his parents, came into this country, and they went to a state called Pennsylvania, Germantown, Pennsylvania. And when they came here, they weren't allowed in their church. Well, this is coming from my father. They weren't allowed in their church because they were dark-skinned. And I said, you got to be kidding. Are we black? He said, no, but we were brown skinned. And because we were brown skinned, then we got the title. And it took years. So I understand what the African Americans were going through. I said, so Dad, you understand about this loan and what happened. I said, then why aren't they treating me this way? He said, but they do. You're from another generation. And your generation, he said, just sit back and look at the slangs that are out there with the people. The slangs are, as you know, Italians. I mean, if you're Italian, you're related to the mob. If you're Italian, look at the names they gave you. They gave you Dago. They gave you, I mean, a WAP. But with Italians, no one else could call them these names but Italians. Because if somebody else did, we would get insulted. And Italians had a big priority to the word, at least my parents did, and that's how they brought us up. And that was the word respect. You better respect your adults. You better respect your your aunt, your uncles, your mother, your father, you better. Or we brought you in this world, we'll take you out of this world. So how many times have you heard this being in the Italian household? Then we came to another generation. We came to what is called, we hear it all. We hear Spanish, we hear Puerto Rican, we hear Spic, we hear all these slangs that are giving to these people. Oh, excuse me, the Italians were also called guineas. But you better be an Italian before you call me a guinea. You better be an Italian. Why? Did it hurt my feelings? No. But it showed me how much respect you did not have for your ancestors. And that's the only way I can describe it. So then it came across that when it came to loans, who couldn't get the majority quote was the African American. And they were petrified. So they lived in areas were poor. They lived in a poor area. Not only they lived in a poor area, but I learned the meaning of the word discrimination, bank loans, mortgage loans, because I was also in the insurance business. And when I was in the insurance business, I got the first degree education. Mortgage companies will hate me for this. I was a general agent, assurance agent, but I don't care. Because I was taught the lower the area is the low income, well, they're not respected, Pearl. These people are not respected. And because they're not respected, we can't give them a homeowners. We'll give them a fire insurance under law, but we can't give them a homeowner. So I used to go in these sections, and I used to see holes in their ceiling. I used to say to them, why aren't you getting this fixed? Can I see your homeowner's policy? They would say, we don't have a homeowner's policy. We have a fire policy. So when I said, well, you're supposed to, under law, have a homeowner's. No, we were just given a fire policy. So when I went back and I became a general agent, insurance agent. And then I wanted to know why this was all about. And it was such a coverage. It still is to this day. It still is to this day in your city, your state, your town, and your wherever you live. There's a poor area, and they're called red lined. Now, what red line means is you cannot get insurance in these areas. The insurance companies don't trust it. They don't trust them. Why? They think they're dirty. They think they're scum. They don't take care of their homes. This is everything that was said to me, but I remembered what my father said to me. And I remembered my father's house was when we lived in a poor area, but our street was the best in the street. So I went back home again, and I said to my father, did you know that this was happening with the insurance? And he said, yes, I did, in poor areas, because there's low class and there's high class in each nationality. And in each nationality, you're going to see who keeps their house up, who doesn't. And this is how our government, this is how our insurance company bids on us. They actually look at this. Then I was more angrier because I said, well, if I went to South Philly, in the Philadelphia area, the Pennsylvania area, I would see a bunch of Italians. And I did. And I would go to each section. And each section I would go to, I would knock on their door. And I would say, your ground is this a reason why you don't live the way you should? And they would get insulted as if they were going to shoot me. But it wasn't for that. I was saying this to them because I was doing some homework. I wanted to see what the insurance companies were seeing. I wanted to see what the banks were seeing. So I can go back to these people to say, you know what? You got it wrong. You don't get it. And I realize for many white people, I'm calling it white people now because I'm considered not white. I'm considered Italian. And I'm proud of it. I'm actually proud of it. And I'm proud of it because that's where my ancestors are. We learn the meaning. If you don't like the mob, don't watch Mob Wives. And yet it's on a reality show. And yet, if you watch these shows, yes, we have a temper. Yes, we have an anger. Yes, we go by the word respect. But because of who I am, you should be glad I'm on your side. And I'm on your side is because of what we're going to talk about today. there are many things that I've done in this city, of Philadelphia even, the city brotherly love. And then we have many banks. And I wanted to know, what did the community do? What did different communities do? I know that the African American, they speak English. What did other communities do? What did the Asian community do? But the Asians, well, they're not a majority right now. And who's the majority? In our cities is the Latino, the Spanish, the Puerto Rican, whatever you want to call them. That's what they are right now. And did you know, and I did some research on this recently, and it's the second most used language in your city and in your state. And there's many more Spanish speakers in Washington, more than Chinese, French, even Italian, even Hawaiian. We all have a trip of language. My problem is, when I do seminars, and I do it for the Spanish community, I'm a little bit appalled. I'm appalled because I say, how come they can't get their house? How come they can't get their whatever they want to get? And they said, no one understands us. And the reason why I'm doing this show today is because I just recently did a seminar. Tonight, this show tonight is actually, I did a seminar in an area in the Philadelphia area. My guest today is the one, my guest today actually is the one that not only put the seminar together, but she's also on my book, Credit Lifeline. And when I wrote my book, Credit Lifeline, you can see it on the website, you can see it on Amazon.com. It'll say Pearl Polto with Zuma. Well, Zuma was this who made my book into a Spanish book. But even then, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it. I'm saying, well, you know what? Good, it's in English, it's in Spanish. Until I started doing seminars for the Spanish community. And I was a little bit in shock because half the people in the audience spoke Spanish and the interpreter had to be Zuma. And Zuma said there, and now I'm going to, well, first I'm going to welcome her to the Pearl Polto Show.
Thank you, Pearl. It's good to be here.
And Zuma, when I did, what is your position right now, though? What is your job right now?
I work for Addiction Services in Philadelphia.
Okay, you work for Addiction Service, so you don't work on the streets or you don't work on an undercover in dirt or whatever.
No, I don't do that. I work in an office.
And so you have the intelligence of 50,000 other people in there in the professional field.
I hope so, yes.
You hope so, you do so. But what is your opinion? And I want your honest opinion, because you hear me saying, what is your honest opinion? When I did those seminars, and you gave me a few seminars to do for the Spanish community, what is wrong? Is it the system or is it the people? Is it the people don't want to learn the English and they can't get their mortgages, their credit cards, or is it the system not understanding it? You would know. What is it? I
think primarily it's a system, and I think eventually it sets a lot of people up for failure. I think, and may I introduce myself when I am asked what I am, because until I say my name, they always think I'm white. There's nothing wrong with being white. I love the color of my skin. But I introduce myself as an American of Puerto Rican descent with Spanish ancestry.
You were born in Puerto Rico.
I was. I was born in Cataño, Puerto Rico in 1955.
Now, when you came here, how were you treated as you were growing older?
Well, when I first came here, I went to San Francisco, and which was already a very multicultural place. So I didn't really see racism that much, and I was still a little girl. And then we came to the East Coast, and then I lived in Lambertville in Hunterdon County, and everybody there was very intelligent and well-bred and gracious. And so at the out front, I didn't see any prejudice.
Those of you who are in California, she's still talking about Pennsylvania.
Yes, I'm talking about Pennsylvania.
Okay, go ahead.
And New Jersey. And the people, I was lucky enough to come into a small town that had a lot of hardworking, intelligent people. So the racism was a little more subtle. As I got older and I could understand what racism was, because for the longest time I never even knew what it was, until, like you were saying about the names, somebody started calling me and my friend Spick and Span. And I thought that was cute because the detergent Spick and Span had come out, and I thought that's what they were talking about. And so my ignorance kept me very happy. And then I later found out, and I felt such a drop of hope and such a loss. And I remember, I don't think I ever spoke to that kid again, and I don't even think he knew what he was saying because he never understood why I didn't speak to him again. But yeah, it came out very suddenly.
When you applied for these places, the older you got and you applied for these banks or credit cards or whatever, did you ever suspect that you were being turned down if you ever were turned down because of your nationality?
Yeah, I knew it the first day that I went to my first job, and I worked for the Bridge Commission. I was the first woman on a certain bridge, and I was the first Hispanic there for sure. And I wanted to get a little car so I could get to work back and forth. And it was only a mile away from my house, but I could have probably walked it. So I went into the bank, and these were people that saw me grow up. I went to school right next door, sat next to their children, did as much or more as their children did. And I walked in the door, and the president of the bank was a friend of mine's father. So I thought, for sure, I have this down. I went in, but the minute I put my Spanish name on that thing, everything changed. It was very subtle change. It wasn't said out loud. It was just, if you've ever had racism, you can smell it a mile away. So I got up and I left. I was a little teary-eyed and a little broken, but like a lot of Hispanics here, felt that maybe I just didn't earn this, or maybe I didn't deserve this, or it wasn't for me.
Is that how they think?
I think sometimes.
For you to say that sentence, is this how the Puerto Ricans or the Spanish? And let me.
I think a lot of people do. I think
Okay.
a lot of us come here with a lot of humility, and because that's how we're raised in our culture. And so we come and we want permission to be in places, not knowing that as an American you already have that permission. But as I was saying, when I walked out the door, I have Irish people on my in-laws' side. Anna went in. She got the loan for me in 5 minutes.
Now, why?
Because she was an upstanding
But if
Anglo
she wasn't
person.
if she wasn't there, why wouldn't you have gotten that loan? Did you? If this is what you thought.
Well, I didn't know I wasn't going to get it. I thought I was going to get it because I was a hardworking, strong, smart, good-looking kid. I thought, oh, of course, they'd be crazy not to give it to me. I had a better job than most of the kids that I graduated with. But he didn't. And when I walked outside the door, it was my mother-in-law's sister, and she saw me a little teary, and she said, what's the matter? And I told her, and she goes, come in here with me. And she marched in there, and I had my car within 5-10 minutes.
So just like the story that I told with the African American that turned her down, the manager turned her down from a certain loan because he wanted a commission, and because she was black, he didn't give it to her until we raised a fuss. Then he gave it to her.
Indeed.
The same with you. Now, my question is, though, in the Spanish community, I know about the Italians community, we're pretty strong people. And you have to watch us, too, because there is mobs out there. But anyway.
In every culture.
But anyway, why doesn't the Spanish community learn to speak the English to get a little bit above so they can get their homes, their cars, and everything else? What is stopping them? Is it the government not giving them the education? What is the problem?
I think, and you know what, it probably goes even deeper than that. I think that we have a big pie here in the United States. And so then you start slicing it up. And the more people get in on it, the smaller your slice gets. And that creates a lot of defensiveness and stuff like that. I think the kids that are born here, some of them don't even speak Spanish. But I know that in the 50s and 60s when folks came here, there was nothing for the community. So then they gathered together and they started creating some things for their community, like Concilio, APM, and other places where they could start getting their own mortgages, start getting their own treatment centers going, start getting things going. Now, if you come here as an older person, anyone who's ever been to a study of a language knows that it's more difficult to learn a language as you're older. So basically, babies can't fly themselves over here. So they come over with maybe their grandmother, their mother. It's difficult to learn another language. And then if you see the wall of racism come up, then you're maybe a little intimidated to even try. The new kids that come up, hopefully they keep their own cultural language and they learn English as well. I think it's good to know more than one language. It's a small world, and the more languages you know that, the more you're able to do in it. However, it is difficult for an older person to learn. The kids, as you see, you got 3, 4, 5, 6, 10-year-olds that are bilingual. And I think they should be honored and respected for that. And it's just, they should know English. They should know English.
That way.
Well, you know what? If I try to teach you how to speak Spanish, it's going to take you a minute.
No.
Or you may never learn.
I may never learn, but she is right there. The older you get, I remember laying on a beach with my grandmother, and she used to say, "Gumasta, start the jeet," and I hear it a lot, "start the jeet." And I was saying, "What does start the jeet mean?" Shut your face. But I learned it. Now I'm trying to learn because of my book Credit Lifeline. I was trying to learn and understand two languages, Italian and one was Spanish. And forget it. I would forget it in 24 hours.
And language is innate. So some of that you have an ear for. But if you've never heard it, and you come in, it's very difficult. I mean, face it. Remember your English class? Didn't half of the Americans and that spoke English fail English?
So
it's difficult to know a language.
Stay in the, I'm going to say the ghetto, because half of them are in the ghetto, and they were back then. Why can't they learn something? And no, I'm going to reverse that, because it's the banks too. The banks, why aren't they hiring all different people that speak different languages? Italian, Russian, and Russians are doing a great job out there. Believe me, they're all over the place. Mm-hmm. Indians, I have an Indian person that I'm associated with. She didn't want to come on here. And the reason why she didn't want to come on here, and I said to her, it's not you're going to be embarrassed, but she said, I'm downing the Americans. They don't work hard. They have it too easy. Send them to another country. And then I did another survey, and this was a guy that was Greek. And he said, I was born and raised in Greece, Pearl, and I come over here and I open up a pizza store, and guess what happens? All the workers are lazy. And he said, if this was in Greece, you'd all be fired. And I'm hearing this.
It's pretty amazing, because what I just thought of was, everybody is doing it. Everybody has a little bit of, well, this is what I did, and this is not right, and doing it over here. Mm-hmm. But we got to remember, this is America. And America is about multicultures. It always has been.
But no, it hasn't
and it always
been.
will be.
No, it hasn't
always.
been.
Just the original ones. What? The Danish came over and the Irish came over. And
because we have people. If you talk, quote, white people, they're going to say, and I'm going to agree with some of them, that my grandmother, when she came into this country, she didn't speak English, but she couldn't have been on food stamps. You get another culture, the first thing they get is their health care, and they get their card. We don't even have, Americans don't have their card. So how is it fair to the people that were raised in this country, brought up in this country?
Well, I'll tell you what.
That every other field in this
I don't even know that it's about that, because I think that maybe that's a little bit of, here, let me give you something since I'm taking so much away from you. I don't know. Is it really out of our benevolence that we're giving these people food stamps? No, because we're Americans and we want to live by a certain standard, and we don't want to see hungry people on the streets.
But there are Americans that are on the street.
And there are Americans that are on food stamps. White people.
I have never seen a foreigner on the street begging for food.
I have never either.
Well, why? Why is that? Why is it when you drive up your California, when you drive up to Florida, when you drive up to Philadelphia, you see signs. You see downtown Philadelphia, downtown Los Angeles, signs. We're working for food.
Well, you know what? That just goes to show me that we're all in the same boat.
No,
because now there's really, yes. Right now, you are seeing a lot of young white kids that you would never see on the street before, homeless, on drugs, or for whatever situation they got on there. And so you are seeing people that you would have never seen before on the streets. So let's get color out of the way. Let's get nationality out of the way, because I think really it's about who's poor and who's not.
That's going to be the solution. But the American people out there, I'm saying American, not just white, the American people are saying, now I'm a little bit for them. Here's why. You come to this country, not mentioning nationalities, but Dunkin' Donuts. But if you come to this country, you have 5 years, and you have 5 years to open up a business, and then bring all your relatives here. Well, who has 5 years?
Because nobody ever gave me 5 years to open up a business.
No one gave me 5 years either.
Well, I don't think any Puerto Rican has 5 years. They're all Americans when they're born, but they're not treated with the same rights. They don't get 5 years to go get a little corner store.
Then we have Russians out there. We have the Russians out there. I mean, if you go to a certain
area. And why did we give them 5 years? Because we've blasted their country off the map.
Well, it's not the point. They're getting more rights than we are. This is what's causing the discrimination.
I don't think it's more rights. I think it's eventually rights that everybody already has. But if we're seeing some of our stuff go their way, our money, our food, then all of a sudden everybody gets, like I said, nobody wants to share that pie. Nobody wants a smaller slice. They want to keep what they have.
Do you think it's
but
our
it's not
government
1950.
doing this? Do you think our government's doing this? Because they're saying, I'm going to give you money to open up all the Dunkin' Donuts. I'm going to give you money to open up
Yeah, I don't like that.
all the stores. I'm going to give you, but I'm not going to give you, and you. You have to earn it.
I think what I've seen the Latinos get is a lot of beds to make, toilets to clean, and a lot of cooking jobs. And I think, and they're all happy to have them. And that's what I was going to say. You're seeing some of these white kids on the street because they're not willing to take some of these other jobs, hardworking jobs in the fields. Note, like when California decided to ban the Chicanos and they went down south to go home again, they had to bus them back up because they had nobody to pick their artichokes. They had nobody to pick their food. Their food was rotting in the fields. So for people that say that these people are taking our jobs, they're really off the mark, and they're really not looking and studying and seeing what's really happening. Now, do I think it's racism? I think that we like to label things, and because it's easier for us to understand. But I think it's human nature for people to want to keep what they have or get more or be a little bit, not so generous with each other. So it takes a little more of yourself, maybe a little education, maybe a little more heart to understand that human beings, people are people. And no matter where you go, we all have the same needs.
It was a good idea. I ran into a kid when I was putting the show together. He was 21 years old. And I said, I'm doing a show. And he said, don't. Now I want to ask you why he made this remark, because maybe you don't know it. But he said, call me Spanish. Don't call me Puerto Rican. Why?
Well, I think because the word Puerto Rican has become like this negative word. Well, Puerto Rico is one of the most beautiful places in the world, as most wealthy Americans know. They fly there anytime they can afford it, and they're served very well. I don't know if it's the acceptance that we're Americans, but get to speak two languages instead of one. I don't know if it's a sexual thing. I think sometimes a lot of underlying behaviors are due to
Spanish is more sensual.
It's sexual. Latinas were always, they always like kind of made us look like the little hookers, the dancers. They would all be Latinas in those movies, and I do think that it is portrayed on television and in movies, and the stereotypes.
They don't say Puerto Rican.
We
they
keep the
say
stereotypes.
Latinos.
Well, because with
J-Lo, an example.
Well, we are Latina. I'm a Latina.
Yes.
But like I told you, I'm a Latina. I'm an American of Puerto Rican descent and Spanish ancestry. Because if you want me to label myself, then I want you to know who I really am.
Okay.
Okay? And I respect my Spanish ancestry because it's a wonderful, incredible history the Spaniards have. And, sometimes negative.
Now,
like the white folks, they smeared and cleared a lot of land, and they killed a lot of people too.
Yes.
We all.
They were the Indians.
Absolutely.
When it came. Well, let's go back to the seminar now, because I felt intimidated by them, because here I am trying to help people get their credit cleaned up, get their homes, but they didn't speak the language.
Mm-hmm. And even if they did, they would probably be a little suspicious. Because, oh my God, here's somebody actually trying to help us. And that I want to thank you for, that you have the mindset to understand that everybody doesn't get it. And even the folks in the suits don't get it, the bankers and all those people. What they don't realize is that they better start getting it, because it is going to be about their bottom line. A lot of workers speak Spanish, and they're working, and they're paying taxes. And guess what? They're going to have children, and those children are going to be second and third generation, and they're going to outrun a lot of people.
I'm seeing that, again, Spanish is the second most used language
in the world,
in the United States right now.
In the world.
And there's more Spanish speakers in the United States than any other nationality. So there has to be a reason for this. So why would the bankers? And I said to one,
well, you think about it. Why do you think? Why do you think someone would want to keep someone else? Okay, you have two people there, and one is a Latino brown type looking person with a Spanish kind of different sounding name, and then you have Mary Smith here looking very appropriate, and they walk into your office, and then I guess presumptions, huh? Okay. Because you don't really know which one of them is going to pay you back faster, quicker, or more loyal, but you assume it.
Or
you have to make a decision.
Yeah, you have to
make a decision. So you're going to decide, and you're going to decide by what you've known, what you've heard, and the stereotypes lead into that. And I don't even think that half the time it's, is evil or are indicative of who we really are. Because I think one-on-one, when people sit together and get to know each other, they really get past all that stuff. So when you were saying, is it the system? Yeah, the system doesn't help. It helps perpetrate. Look at what we're doing to our president.
But how could somebody, if I'm clearing someone's credit, it's not in Spanish.
Right.
So how would they know?
Well, if you have a
Or-
Spanish
but-
name, that's kind of hard to get rid of. I kept my Spanish name on purpose. Even as I married, I didn't want to lose it, and I knew that it was going to give me a little
Well,
barrier
wait a
on the
minute.
way in,
kept
but I
my
wanted.
Spanish name on purpose. What else could you change it to?
Well, my husband is Irish,
Okay.
okay, and I just could have, and then you could change your name to anything, because when I walk in the door, they don't know what I am.
Okay.
Okay, so I've heard the prejudice on both sides, because
Okay.
I have a Spanish ear and an English ear.
But my problem is with the people that do not speak English. How do they get their mortgages? How do they get approved? Does the bank have to hire somebody that speaks Spanish for them to get approved? Like
Or maybe
me,
just hire
if
somebody that's
I'm
quite
doing-
intelligent. Somebody that knows enough about the world, a
that's
little
the
more
world.
worldly.
That's the world.
Well, no, not everybody can do a certain job. And people come into their jobs with their own prejudices.
You had to interpret what I said at that seminar. You had to interpret what I was saying. So what about those people? Suppose they had a credit problem. You had to interpret it.
Well, you know, if they didn't want Puerto Ricans to be Americans, I guess they shouldn't have taken over the island. Okay?
Okay.
But at this point, they can't go backwards. And so we have people here that speak a different language. But you know what? No matter where you go, you're going to have people there. You're going to have people that speak Irish and Polish. And like you said, we have a big Russian contingency and now a big Asian. And what happens is all the groups
The
have to...
Asians took over the Italian market.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know what? It's just a Philadelphia market. That's what it is. And it sells vegetables.
Now, you tell me, how can I help the Spanish community get their homes and get their credit in order when they don't speak the language? How can they, you tell me now, how can I help them?
And I think in that case, the Spanish community has to help themselves as well. I think we do try to help each other a lot. We are a community that will help each other a lot. And we tend to, everybody's our cousin, you know. And I think what you're doing right now is fabulous. And I think that people, it is a little sensitive subject, you know. People get real, you know, your innate feelings, your animalistic feelings come up when you have to defend where you were born, how you were born, who you were born to, because that is a circumstance of birth that we have nothing to do with. You cannot decide, you did not decide to be Italian. You did not choose who your parents were. You did not choose where they were born, you know. But the choice we have made was that we're all Americans. And so do we really believe in this Constitution, or is it just a piece of paper that we wave around? Because if you read the Constitution, all these things kind of fall to the wayside, and you would do the right thing. And what you're doing is great because you're putting a light on this. And so maybe it's a little silly of us to act this way. And maybe it's, and it's fear. I think, people come from two emotions, from fear or love. And under fear, there's a lot of stuff. And all the negative stuff happens under fear, and all the positive stuff happens under love. So when you're afraid and you come here, if you don't have an education, then you're even more afraid.
You're a very smart, intelligent woman, as I say. What's your title at your job?
I do, I'm a project aide, and what we do is we do a lot of pilot projects for the University of Pennsylvania. We also try to help people get treatment. We help them get resources. We know that treatment's not enough sometimes, so we'll layer up resources to help the person out. And what you see is you'll see a person maybe that has had a good life and then turned bad, or maybe bad from the beginning, start to grow. When you give people a chance and a little hope and good information, they will do what they have to do.
And
there's always going to be
suppose
people
they
that
don't, I was
don't.
gonna say.
There's always going to be that. And that's not in any one, that's not indicative of any race.
Mm-hmm.
That's in every race.
So how can I help the people that do not speak the language of English get their homes or get their credit corrected?
Well, I think the United States has to understand that we do have, and in our departments, in behavioral health departments, we have people that speak many languages, and we have people ready to do those calls if need be. If somebody calls me and they say, I speak Cantonese, I have a list of people that I can go to and call for a Cantonese translator, because the people I work with are quite intelligent, and they know these are going to be our folks. These are our folks. They're not coming. They're already here. And like I said, some of it is brought up. We have tapes in our head from when we're children. So if there's prejudice in your house when you're growing up, you come home with that tape. and then you go outside and then you see something negative, you'll live next to a black person and that wasn't a great person to you, so now all of a sudden every black person you see goes with that stain in your mind. You have to learn what prejudice is, what racism is, and step out of it and be strong and be yourself and really want this country to thrive.
Do you think that'll ever happen?
Well, I believe in the United States, and so I really want it to happen. So the only thing I can do is daily make sure that every time I come into a situation that I can make a difference at, I do. And as with you, you gave me the opportunity to translate it into Spanish. That was a very exciting opportunity for me. We were the only Spanish-speaking people where I was raised. So I saw my grandmother go through difficulties because she didn't speak it. Now, eventually, as people get to know each other, you don't even have to verbally speak because people communicate in many ways aside from their words. All of a sudden, you're part of that community. And you can either help somebody thrive and be a very strong part of your community, or you can let, your community rot. That's the freedom of choice we have in the United States. But if you're a real American, like I said, if you believe in the Constitution, and you really believe it, not just in words, but in theory and in your heart, then you're going to go out there and you want this country to thrive, and you want this country to own up to its promises.
Interesting. The people out there, I'm doing this show for a reason, and because of the Spanish community wanting to get their homes and wanting to get their credit done, and anybody out there, even in Puerto Rico, when you're watching this in Puerto Rico, yes, we can still help you there. But anybody that, Zuma, when the seminars that I did for her, anybody out there that actually contacts me or contacts Zuma, you will get a discount. Just say her name, and we will help you get your credit straightened out and get your mortgage or your car, and make it known that, don't just sit back. And I always say, sit back, enough's enough. It's time you step up to the plate. I don't care what nationality you are. It's time to step up to the plate to say, I'm not going to take it no more. Enough's enough. And then do the right thing. And what I'm saying to you, every Spanish out there, I'm hoping that Zuma, and I'm going to ask her now that what I just said to you from Puerto Rico to the Spanish community, what did I just say?
Buenos días, yo me llamo Zulma Maldonado y aquí estoy con Polto. Pro es una persona que siempre está apoyando la comunidad que habla español. Y yo hice un libro con ella para ayudar a la gente hispana que no saben hablar inglés, ayudar el crédito de ellos, para ellos también tener el sueño un día de tener su casa, su carro, cualquier cosa que ustedes quieren. Ella va a ayudarte a ustedes. Ella puede ayudarte con el crédito, puede arreglar crédito, quiere hacerlo para toda la comunidad que habla en español. Y si necesitan ayuda, me llaman a mí, Zulma, a 215-546-1200. Pregunten por mí. Y cuando llamen a ella, le dicen que hablaron conmigo y ella te va a ayudar.
And if you cursed me at any time, you're in trouble.
And until you learn Spanish, you won't know that.
But anyway, and first of all, let me remind you out there, tomorrow I will be doing the picket in front of the post office that we want closed, so you're going to be seeing that as well. Don't forget, June 6th is the world-renowned psychic will be on the show. We're going to be doing a lot of interesting shows, a health show. Dr. Paul will be back on. I do want to do a show on the scams out there because there's many scams. I'm just building them all up. I can't thank my guest enough because I did, like I said, a few seminars. And the seminars, a lot of people, Zuma had to interpret the language there. And if you're in Puerto Rico and you're watching this, well, now you're going to get it in English and Spanish. Just fast forward it, whatever. But I want to thank everybody. I want to thank you, Zuma. I want to have you back on again because of just tell you the results, what's going to happen with this, okay?
Well, thank you. And I thank you for the Latino community. I think that it's way too long, but I think some respect and respect for your work and how hard you come into this country and you work and you take the least of jobs. We know that you're working hard. Do not be afraid to go out there. If you have a little accent, do not be afraid to speak up for yourselves.
Thank you. This is Pearl Polto. As always, making the most of your credit, giving credit where credit's due. This show is to the Spanish community or the Latino community. See you next week.
Bienvenida.